Yeah, it'll come in on that side there.
Copy that.
So, hey everyone, thanks for joining. I've got NoSloppy, Brian Connor here with me tonight. We should be having Matt McGeary, SA22C, join us shortly, but we're going to get started because I don't want to keep everybody waiting. Primarily, we're just going to talk OS6, and I did this last week with Professors Warren Frederick and Meg Chu Sith. And I know that I didn't get to all the questions, so if you have questions, definitely put them in the chat. I'm going to try better this time to hit them all. But we're gonna, talk ProffieOS6, go through some stuff here. But thanks for joining me tonight, Brian.
Hey, nice to be here on this side of the screen.
Yeah.
I'm usually over there.
Yep. Yeah. We've actually little background history. It's probably 2 months ago. I feel like it was October. We did a chat between Brian, Matt, myself, and Frederick to try to figure out how to get parts of my prop into their props. Hey Kim, thanks for joining. And during that conversation, it ended up all the code that I've dumped in my prop ended up needing to stay there. So that's where I ended up with SA22C and working, trying to get the one button stuff into my saber and now into my prop, and now we've got that capability. Hey Mac, thanks for joining. But I know Brian, you've been working on your own prop. I wasn't sure where you were on your prop, so I figured this would be a good opportunity to kind of catch up with you on yours.
Oh, sure. So, I mean, basically for 5.9, I just kind of tagged along as we went, kept making. I have like my personal version over here. And then I was working at some point, I don't know, it was one of the conversations I was probably on the Crucible. I don't know, somehow somebody suggested, I think it was Frederick. It was like, if you want to submit it, just prepare for a grueling code review or something to that effect.
Yes.
And I took that as an opportunity to, we're talking about professor of the class here. Like if he's willing to personally overlook my code and give me pointers and I can learn stuff from it, I was all about it. The thing is, my 5.9 personal, just stuff like I kind of bent the ProffieOS rules to what he would find acceptable, where I couldn't just straight up submit it because I was like, yeah, don't look at that delay over there because, he's got this rule about you can't have any blocking code where that would be everything is running, but you have this one thing you want to do. You can't stop everything else from happening to let your little thing wait for the next whatever and then come back to the code. So putting delay straight up the function, I guess it is for delay, puts everything else on hold. It puts it on delay because before the sound library and before speech, really like using wave files for speech, that was my thing. Like I moved away from the talky voice. First, I made hex prompts for I mirrored whatever the male voice says, and I found a Texas Instruments library.
Oh, hey, Matt's joining us. Yeah, sorry, Brian. I saw Matt chime in. I didn't want to leave him out. So we're live, Matt. We started a few minutes early.
We're in a cargo bay.
Oh, you got, man. Brian's got a cool mic, and you've got a cool backdrop, and I look like the cheap guy. Damn it.
Well, I'm shimmering around like I'm. The virtual backgrounds work for.
There's a Force Ghost in the
That's
cargo
right.
bay.
Hey, Nick, thanks for joining. So sorry for interrupting Brian, but Brian was talking about his text and talkie, and I'll let you finish that up. Yeah. No, that's what I want to carry on. Yeah.
So the 5.9 that I had used stuff like that. Like I was big on making the wave files for speech. So the spoken battery level would see if you use before we had sound library, you would just summon hybrid font to play a common polyphonic sound, but they don't wait until one is finished. They don't queue up. So you can't queue up multiple. So like 4.75 volts, you got to pause. So I went to the wave file and I figured out how the average for a single digit was about 600 milliseconds. So I had say a digit, delay, say a digit, say point, delay, and I couldn't submit that. So then he threw at me, which is the right answer to do it that way, actually. He's like, you probably want to put it in a state machine. which is a way to simulate what I was doing. But for people listening, it's basically you can set it up to loop, do your thing, let the rest of the system continue, and then come check back. At that same point, you re-enter into the loop, say, anything else? Yeah, now say point. Okay, point. And then it goes, it does the other system stuff. It comes back. Anything else? Yep, say 3. So I glanced at that and I saw several spots. The way I kind of reverse engineer, and this is how I've learned. So anybody who's wondering, like, how do I learn C++? Yes, you could go get a book and you could read C++. I generally, if I need to know what's the operator to say greater or less than, for example, you just Google C++, greater than less than, and you'll come to like a Stack Overflow website, or you'll come to some C++, website. And there's plenty of examples, and basic examples that you can then, it needs to be in a parentheses. Oh, I see, it didn't have, and just learning little bits and pieces. So when he said state machine, I'll literally go to my ProffieOS folder and I'll just search contextually, like context search. That's how my Mac Finder search, I think, is easier than other things. But anyway, I search for state _ machine, and it brings up all the results of anything that has that in it. And then I can just go study that and look and be like, okay, so it's got a begin, it's got an end. Oh, we're inside a loop. Okay. And just deduce possibly what it should be, and so like building that prop file, there was a lot of that too. So I ended up I submitted him like a stripped down version of it that didn't do any of those illegal operations. And it was okay. And I think the one that's standing now for OS6, once the sound library comes, it's like, oh, great, here's the right answer. So I can legitimately do this. And I initially had it, I fell in love, but I found myself preferring a 1-button saber. Once I got my Leia, I got the KR Sabers Leia, and 1 button was all you had. And so Matt's, the SA22C prop had a lot of 1-button stuff in it, but I had all these extra functions. So then I just played the game of, all right, what's an available thing? Oh, well, we have triple click. That opens up a whole bunch of stuff. So I added some triple click stuff, and then I ended up just massaging it. And now if I can get away with a 1-button, I'll use it preferably over a lot, because some of the 2-button sabers I have, for instance, a Graflex clamp doesn't want to bend, like I'm hitting the 1 button, and to hit the second one, it's not a clear button. It's kind of like, should be on a seesaw, and it's neither or. So I was like, I'm just going to do one. And on the Cal Kestis saber, like the top button's kind of fiddly and loose. The back one's tight. I was like, I'm just going to use this nice button in the back, So anyway, so that's submitted, and he went over stuff to the point that I could just clean up. I found missing a comma here, like a couple of little cleanup things that I needed to do. And I think it's mostly ready to rock. When we were, us three and Frederick were talking about your prop file, I just went, what? And then
Matt missed that intro part about the backstory there.
I got out of the loop. I don't know. I was busy for like 2 weeks straight or something. And in the interim, you two had kind of joined up, and I was like, okay, well, they're going to handle making something that works with 1 button. I grabbed a copy at that point.
You did all the work. I just tested it.
Oh, all right. Well,
you did the legwork.
Ideas.
Yeah.
But I grabbed a copy of it at that stage and integrated all of my preferences as far as like, controls, pointing up, pointing down, when I want this, when I want that, just one command for things, whether it's on or off. So it's less confusing. And to me, it's just very intuitive. Like I consulted Frederick. I'm like, so should I try to get all this edit mode stuff? And he's like, look, make the prop file for you the way you want it to be. And then if other people want to use it, that's up to them. But if you want to submit it to me, make it how you enjoy it to be. And you can always update it. And there's always things like that. So that's what ended up happening. I kind of let you guys take the edit mode version. I mean, I still have a version, but dude, you've made like 7,000 pull requests of updates, and which is great, and that's what it's all about. That's why we're beta. But the version I have is like, someone posted a thing like, "Oh, this define color wheel zoom isn't working." Frederick's like, "Where did you get that?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? I have color wheel."
Old.
Oh, that must be an old version.
Old.
So I just done.
Okay.
So what's up there for me is great. I'm just happy that it's there and that people would be interested to use it, and it's an option. So
cool.
That's that.
So let me catch the chat up. Hey, Nick, and let's see. Oh, Space Window's on. Hey, Space, thanks for joining. And we got Tom. Hey, Tom's back. Gin and tonic. Cole has a question. Kids try this home. I want to give Matt, since he joined us late, just an opportunity to chime in on kind of where he's at. And then we will get a couple of these questions in. And if you guys have more questions, put them in the chat. I am going to try to pay attention to that chat this time. But the mic's yours, Matt.
Sure, thanks. So I have been very not involved in this cycle of OS building. My work in personal life has been absolutely nuts. So
how dare you?
How dare I? Exactly. So Fernando did a bunch of work, and we worked together on getting sort of even though mostly my one button stuff is cribbed from a lot of people, including, Dimitri and other people, right, in one place, together in his prop. And that's mostly what I worked on here, is helping get that squared away. So if you're going to use edit mode, which is the big banner feature of OS 6, then you can do it with a 1 or 2 button saber. And I think you've got 3 button options in there too, right? So
yeah, it's 3 button, but I don't have a lot on the 3rd button, because to my 2 button, I spent so much time fitting everything in that the 3rd button's kind of extraneous. But yeah, OS 7 maybe.
Well, that's the thing. I don't have too many 3 buttons left either. It's just my Graphlexes, right? Because usually I have a couple in the clamp and the red button, or the slider, sorry. My red buttons are kill switches on my Graphlexes. So that's what I've been working on for the most part. But I think, I want to try and get into more stuff in OS 7 and more specifically around the sounds, right? Because I put spins in OS 5 and never really touched them. I want to revisit that a lot.
They never got tested, really. They need to be tested.
Well, no, they don't. They really get tested. They haven't changed much, right? But I mean, I think the whole sort of paradigm of like spins versus swings, and you did some stuff where you had the slashes be progressive swings, right? I think that's really cool. I think we need to sort of get our heads around how we broadcast that to the font makers. Like, here is like the way we try and modulate, like put together all these sound fonts so that they're all standardized, right? So we know exactly how to do this sort of progressive sounds you put in, which are really cool. And I think we need to apply that to swings too, right? Where you've got some of that with the
accent swings are going to be there. If you use the and actually I have some stuff queued up when we get a little bit further along to show for some of that. I figured that would be a good discussion, since you kind of did the accent swings originally.
Yeah, and then in the back of my head, and I've played around with this a bit and never really got too far, and I always want to pick it up again. It's like, there has to be a way to do like a smooth swing for accents, so we don't need individual files anymore. There has to be a way to do some sort of looping, maybe single sound, that's kind of like...
Yeah, like a second layer on top of that.
Yeah, right, because you think about what the accent things are doing is they're adding like think about Rey when she's practicing against the rock in The Last Jedi. You want that womp when it comes close to the screen, right? That's the accent sound, really. You want that kind of like Brett Burt in the thing with his mic getting close to the speaker. That's what that womp is, right? And we have files to cover that, the static files, which we've had in Lightsabers forever. But there's got to be a way to do that looped. And then all of a sudden, you just have 3 sets of files. You got your high-low and your womp. I don't even know what to call it, right? And then it's totally dynamic, right? That's always tickling in the back of my mind. I never really
That's a good idea.
Get it working well, but that's the one thing I think is missing from the sound on lightsabers, is getting rid of static sounds for motion entirely. Obviously, you can't get away with static blasters and clashes and whatever, right? But like the gyro stuff with the saber, we should be able to get it kind of without statics.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, sound is I dabble in it, but that's not my area of expertise. I leave that to you guys. So let me get, Cole had a question here, which we can probably segue in. So, hey, Cole, hopefully you're still on. I know you asked this a few minutes ago. So with edit mode, you're not actually putting the blade styles on EST. So the blade styles, the style code, if you make it in editor, if you get it from the library or you get from other sources, that's actually, it's it's actually the actual code that creates the lighting effects. So it has to go, the code has to get on the board in order for the processor to be able to do it. But you're going to be able, if you build styles with the edit mode functionality, you're going to be able through web USB or Bluetooth or through the edit mode menu, or also technically by hand, edit large chunks of it. And it'll depend on the actual style, but what edit mode set up is the ability for you to basically make a lot of changes that normally you would have to make, so that instead of having to like create like a new style because you just wanted to change the ignition speed, or a new style because you wanted to add a pre-on effect, or a new style because you wanted the swing effect to be a different, variable. That stuff will be, technically it's on the SD card. How you interface with it is multiple ways. So you got the ProffieOS Workbench, which is web USB. If you have Bluetooth, obviously you can also use that. The edit mode menu, if you enable it, or eventually once we get out of OS 6 beta, there'll be more documentation on actually doing it by hand. Now, the by hand gets a little more complicated because there's a lot of variables in there, but that'll be on your SD card essentially, and that'll let you do that. But the actual style code does have to reside on your board, because that's actually what's getting processed and then creating the effect. So moving that over to the SD isn't really what OS 6 is going to be doing. So hopefully that answered it. Let's see.
I can answer.
Well, there are going to be some in those config files, right? They're not very human readable, but a lot of the parameters you're setting are all sort of marked in the.
And I can actually, I tried to show them and I didn't know how to zoom, and Brian in the chat tried to get me to zoom. Let me do that. Let me bring this screen over for you guys, because believe it or not, I'm not great with, where was it? I had it. So your presets INI, hopefully, is that better? How did we?
Yeah, it looks okay.
Control plus, which is the equals key.
That looks good. I can read it on my screen anyways.
I'll make it bigger, just for everybody. So this is a presets on INI, and this is for and actually Matt had written the original editing presets INI by hand. This is what the edit mode version will look like, and essentially a lot of it's the same. So you've got your font. We do automatically append the comment as your secondary font path, and that's built into my prop. We have your track, and then this is your style. So this is two blades. So this piece of code right here is what used to be the old presets INI. Everything that comes after it is now what technically edit mode is doing. And this will take some explanation. I will eventually write documentation on it, because I've been making changes throughout beta. It didn't make sense for me to write this up yet, because if I change it, I got to go rewrite everything. So this part is going to be, it technically would be what I would consider a little more advanced, because you're going to obviously have to pay attention. But essentially, so anytime there's three numbers, and they could be any length, these are RGB 16 values. So the edit mode colors run RGB 16, and that's because of how we translate going back in, and Frederick would be the better person to explain that part of it. But this is just an RGB 16 number, so this is obviously blue. So it's 00, 65, 30. This would be your base color. So if you want to change your base color, you can do it by hand right here, just by editing these values, and then this gets applied to the style. This would be your alt color, so this is the next three. And then anytime there's numbers that don't have commas, everything is obviously separated by space, but this is actually the style option value, and then this would be the ignition option value, and then this is the ignition time, and then, so this is where the documentation is going to be key, but all of this actually translates into what creates your style now, and this is all editable. So if you edit it in your presets INI, save this to your SD card, you can do all your color changes, you can do your option changes, you can do your changes to ignition speed, retraction speed, to position for lockup, to melt size, to drag size. It's all in here. It's just, it's only separated by a single space. So you have to know what these values are. That's where the documentation is going to come in. But this is editable. You save it to your SD card, put it on, and it makes the changes for you. This is essentially what edit mode and web USB are actually editing. They're doing it with an interface so that you don't have to figure out which is which, but once the documentation is available, those who are inclined and want to only edit on the SD, no menu, no web USB, you still will be able to do that as an option.
Right.
So hopefully that covered it. Let me get us back up on the screen. Oops, I think I had that. That's the way up. Let me see. Who else do we have in here?
So I tried to
BK.
cheat and load up a another tab with YouTube with the stream in it, and my computer's like, "Don't do that."
Oh, I saw it didn't want you to do that.
Yeah, so I was trying to just type. I don't see I can type comments here, but to answer, I saw Ken Kanama had a question. The answer is this is a Pixel 6 cell phone that I have.
Oh, that's why.
Oh.
I'm just using a crappy 720p webcam my work gave me for remote work.
Yeah, I'm pretty much a webcam that I've been using forever, and that's probably the number one comment I get on my channel is, "Hey, what camera to use?" And I'm like, "It's like a $40 Amazon special."
Mm-hmm.
You have one that beeps religiously at the end of
Yes.
every video. That's the telltale.
Yeah.
Time to go.
Yeah.
Beep.
Yeah, eventually I'll learn how to edit videos too. I know there's a lot of stuff I should be doing I don't know how to do, so I'm very mom and pop.
Dude, it works. It's all good.
But yeah. So do either of you guys have any questions? Otherwise, I have a few topics I can kind of dive into, and if any questions come into the chat.
Well, I mean, obviously everyone's going to be waiting for your library to come out with OS6 compatible styles pre-baked. Even me for a while until I figure out all the new syntax of the menu styles. That'd be my first question is, where is that? Instant gratification.
It's coming. Yeah, it's coming. I have it working okay. I don't have it working well enough that I'm happy to share it yet. That's the answer. So I do, it actually lets me segue to this though, so I'll use that as a segue. So I've had questions on the test styles. So I'm going to switch the screen again. So this is, those of you who have been doing the testing, or if you haven't been doing the testing, you can go to the beta thread. You can go to my intro page, which I'll show in a minute. The test styles are, some of them, they're kind of like the step between OS5 and full OS6, because I built these actually before some of the new features have been added. So, but for testing purposes, these cover a lot of stuff. The library is going to let you basically not only customize the style, but I covered this a little bit last week with Tom and Frederick on the idea behind what I'm trying to do with the library, and also the kind of driving force behind edit mode is to have one style, so one preset style on your config, be able to turn into hundreds of presets on your Saber. Because in a lot of cases, what I find is like somebody will, in the past, if you wanted to have like say a Qui-Gon and an Obi-Wan and a Vader and a Kylo and a Rey and a Mace on one Saber and have all those presets, you'd make your green version with this color blast and log blah blah blah. But then you'd actually be using almost the same exact style, like an audio flicker or something, the Fallen Order, and then make a new preset out of it. The idea behind it now is to consolidate it all to one style, free up your space so that then you can do a completely other unique style and change it. And so like in the case here, it will be making more sense once the library is in visible form, but the styles you're going to build are going to have what are called options, and the options are in that INI file, and they're basically just integers. But so in this case, the rotoscope style for the test, it actually has 6. In the OS 0 is the first of anything. So it has the default, which is your 0 value. So in this style code, the rotoscope of style option 0 only runs one color, and then it mixes obviously to create the effect. If you change your style option to be the option 1, you actually get 2 colors in the effect, and you can change all them independently. And what that does is it lets you you could throw like a deep blue and then a really like bright blue, and it'll actually change the look of the effect. So you get a brand new effect out of it by really just swapping the option and then changing out the colors. And then we also have speeds, so you can have a faster version, and then again 1 color or 2, slower version 1 color or 2. But all this gets put in one style. Then you use edit mode or web USB or that INI, toggle a style in a different preset, and it's a brand new style. And then same thing, that was the other piece of it, is like the ignitions, the retractions, the preons. A lot of times people want to have one retraction with this, with an audio flicker or rotoscope, but then they want to do a different preset that has a different ignition or retraction. To save memory, what we do is we give you, again, up to 6 ignition capabilities. And again, they're all set by those variables in INI. So you could take this style, turn it in to another preset, and then instead of doing a regular standard ignition, you change the ignition option to 1, and all of a sudden it's a wipe in, so it comes from the blade tip in. Or you can have the cycle up, which is that's the color cycle effect. Or you can have a spark tip, or you can do the center out or center in, or any other. So that's the library. Once it's done, you'll actually not only be picking every enhancement and every customization, you'll be picking the options and the order of the options. So if you particularly like preons is where this really comes home. Like you could have your faulty ignition, you can have your overload, you can have your pulsing, and all that. You build it into one of your styles and then make copies, and all of a sudden you can have one version does faulty ignition, the next version toggle the option. You got you're actually going to have more and more capabilities out of one style because of the options. And the options really it just toggles which one of these runs on that particular preset. And the library is that's where the slowness is coming from my end, is I have to be able to make this all translate backwards so you can build it. But that's basically what, from the start of edit mode through the library's launch, that's the driving force, is giving everybody the customization so they can do whatever they want, but also having it work so that, like, the idea is an installer can put together these really crazy styles, give it to their end user, and the end user can just toggle whatever they want all from one place, not have to go and upload. Or those of you who are, you change your mind all the time, you could just toggle it really quick. So that's where I'm getting after with the library. But it's still, I'm hoping to get more time. I'm hoping to have it done by the end of the year. It's kind of what I'm working towards. But I was hoping to get some more done this week, but regular life got in the way. I was hoping to show something, but maybe a week or two I can have something to show. But I went on a long rant. Let me let you guys chime in, and let me get some more questions here.
I think there's some more questions.
Yeah, let's see. We got, hey, Wesley. Let me put us back up on the screen here. And if I ever talk too much, guys, don't feel bad about cutting me off. That happens. Let's see. New sounds. Let's see from font makers. So the dynamic melt and lockup, the intensity versions, they are timed, where the intensity builds up over time. Technically, because lockup and melt, though, because they are looped, I don't know how you get that out of a font, but I would leave that to the sound guys. And Brian obviously does his stuff. Maybe he has an idea of how you would maybe make that work.
Make what, Mark? A new sound?
So yeah, more dynamic melt and lockup type sounds. Because they're looped, though, I think we probably kind of get stuck.
Yeah, I've been working on a blaster prop, because that's kind of a neglected field, I guess. And I found, like, you guys go run with Saber stuff. I'll make a basic one, and then maybe I can. Actually, I'm making an F11D blaster at some point, and the dual prop functionality brings up, like, all these options. So anyway, there's one thing that's just sitting quietly idle in the stock blaster. It says self-destruct, copied over from the thermal detonator thing. I'm like, oh, I totally want self-destruct on my, like, oh, it's jammed. Oh, I'm empty. What can I do? All right, I'm just going to blow this thing up. So anyway, in doing so, making the animation for it, I just wanted something that was increasingly going to blow up, going to blow up, going to blow up. And I was also working on the OLED images for that so that they would sync. So now I have, like, OLED images will auto time, basically like Waveland is for blade animations. We'll just have the OLED animations time automatically. So if you have a long force effect, it's going to do your force animation for the duration of the force sound.
Yep.
And kind of override the durations that you can set if you want. And it's on a define. But in doing that, long story short, I was playing with the lockup, and it's like, I can't get the time of this lockup loop. And touch base with Frederick, and he's like, yeah, it's kind of a standalone thing. And lockups are kind of locked up into like
Yeah,
what
they're
they
loop
are. So
state
unless that
essentially.
whole
Yeah.
back end kind of sees a revision of how they're done,
Right.
but I mean, these ideas and these changes, who's that, Wesley? I mean, these all come from, this is the whole point, you know, is that it's a communal effort to invent things and come up with things and change things. And you got an idea, that's cool. Just maybe try to think of some specifics as to like, this is what I'm picturing happening. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And that's easier to work with than like a generic concept of maybe something like that. I mean, that's a good start, but then it's going to be, I mean, if it was your idea in the first place, it doesn't hurt to try to jot down some details of like, hey, maybe it could be something like this. And even if it ends up being completely different than what you started with, at least you had a, you know, that happens a lot too. Like I'll start working on something and I'm get stuck and like, there's got to be a way to do this. And the answer is usually, let's back all the way up. And instead of forcing it to be this one way and getting stuck at this one point, let's try a different approach from the start. And maybe it ends up usually being the right answer. And it's like, oh, I could have just done this from the beginning. And that's the fix. So, I mean, if you're talking about, I don't know, I mean, there isn't any kind of sensors of like additional pressure. You know, you've got the impacts being registered at different degrees of impact, you know, and clash values would be harder hits.
Yeah, I think.
But
yeah, I think the eventual would be probably a change to how lockup runs. The current one would be tricky, I think.
Yeah,
but it's not something.
But if you have an idea, yeah, just think of like some specifics, jot it down, ask the question in all the forums, Crucible, Facebook, wherever you want. And it's always good to have a brainstorm.
Oh,
well, and notably,
get,
like,
oh,
sorry, you got a question there, so go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, finish up.
I was going to say, notably, like the discussion we just had is like problems we had, right? So I put the accent swings in because I wanted it to sound, you know, more like the films, and you know, turns out that it was just the same way that Lecter was doing it at the exact same time. So go through the exact same idea, which is, you know, makes sense because overlaying it made sense. And then I had my tricorder prop. I needed it to put little icons on the screen, so we put the start of the images in there that then Brian took and added a lot to, right? So the point is, we had problems we wanted to solve, so we just like dug in and started hacking away at code, right? And then Fernando and I did the beta of color change way back 2 years ago, year and a half ago, right?
Yeah.
So
that's what we were talking about.
You know, that's what I was talking. We actually were talking about that earlier because that was going to be my original segue in, but we got you in a little late. So yeah, and I was talking. This is going to be a repeat for Brian because he and I were talking before we went live. But I've noticed that we've had a large influx to the Proffie board community, and there's people I've chat with and they've never heard of the CC fork, and it blows my mind. But it was so long ago now.
It was a long time ago.
It's crazy. But so I'm going to rehash just because I have you on. So way back when, color changing on Proffie board didn't exist, and it wasn't really something Frederick was interested in. So that was one of my first things. Like I did the localized lockup, which the original one, when I look back on it now, I cringe, but at the time it was cool. And then so I wanted to add this color changing, and I finally, with a lot of help from Frederick, got it working. But then he's like, well, you probably have to put it in a fork. I didn't know what a fork was. I was like, what? A spoon? What? Huh? Like, I was like, okay. I didn't even know GitHub. I only used the zip file that was on his website. So I knew Matt had his fork through looking through the TRA forum, and I knew you did your volume and you had all this other stuff. So I reached out to Matt and I was like, hey, I'd like to put color change, and we ended up working together on it. And you know, at that time, actually, you were doing most of the legwork because I still didn't know what the hell I was doing. I think I was sending you code in like Messenger and Facebook, and then you were throwing it, because I didn't know how to use GitHub. But long story short, we introduced color change, but then we added effect scroll, which is that's actually the underlying thing that became edit mode, which is where it circles back. But you also you fixed the localized lockup by using a new function.
Talk about what Brian said about coming at a problem the wrong way. I came at that problem the exact wrong way. It worked, but it was horrible.
It worked better than what we were doing before
Mhm.
because for those who weren't around back then, what we did, localized lockup originally was a gradient. And what I would do is I actually had a builder, but I would take your base style and I would break it into 5 pieces. And the 2 pieces on one side, 2 pieces on the other, and then I would replace the middle one with the lockup effect. And that's how it became localized. And then we wanted to add animation to it. So what I did was I actually took a 4-part gradient and a 5-part gradient, and I pulsed them over each other, and that's how we got the original movement of the lockup.
Mhm.
But the code was
Huge.
so long because we had to repeat the base style multiple times over. So then when Matt tackled it, though, he made it so we didn't have to do that, and that became kind of the precursor to the current alpha layer stuff. Now, Frederick took layers, like once he kind of got the idea of what needed to happen, he broke out layers and redid actually all the stuff, which blew everything out of order.
I killed myself making all this math to make that stupid lockup effect work. And then he saunders in like, here, shapes.
I hated you guys so much.
He's like, how about we just do this? And it worked better. But the fork, so that's where I was going. The fork actually to me, in my own headcanon, the fork helped move OS3 and now where we are now. Without it, I don't think a lot of this stuff I wouldn't have been able to learn. And I'd still be doing stuff, but to me, that's where I got my feet wet with doing it and supporting it. And then Frederick, so like our color change was what's now the color change style, which is where you would build the colors you want in an order and then roll through them. Frederick actually took it from a different approach, and he rolled out the color wheel, which is what basically gives you the full spectrum. And then when it came time for OS6 alpha testing, and I was testing his color wheel, I was like, this is nice. I was like, can we have our color change from the fork? And he brought it over and obviously enhanced it. But so all this time through OS4, OS5, I wanted to get the effect scroll capability in, and that's what I kept trying to figure out, and eventually that was the baseline that created edit mode. And then once I got the styles capability, so we could change colors, so then I wanted to be able to change the style. We got that in. And then once that was in, Frederick, and I told Brian earlier, Frederick was like, we probably could do fonts and tracks. And he sent me how to do it. And then I added fonts and tracks. And then I was going back and forth with him, and I was saying, this is great. I was like, color change, though, the variation, it applies one color change to all blades and all styles, which means that if you wanted to change your blast color or your lockup color to match your new green blade versus when you had the blue blade, that wasn't it. And then that's kind of where the whole second half of edit mode came in with the variables that I showed earlier. And that was all Frederick saying, we probably could just do it this way. And then, of course, obviously with all his knowledge, he took it off. But the long story short, the fork, the CC fork that SA22C had that I gave him
your
stuff.
idea. We worked on together.
I had ideas and I didn't know how to do it. He made it happen. But that to me is what's led us to this point here. So it's an important, for those of you brand new to Proffie board and really excited about OS6, I don't think we have what we have now if Matt wasn't able to help me and make the fork and we weren't able to prove out some of that stuff. And now it's just, to me, the sky's the limit. So obviously, there's a lot that's come before to make what's currently possible, and that was a big piece of it for me.
Let's thank Matt.
Yeah.
Okay, now that's enough.
Let's see.
Go ahead,
Matt.
That's why I jumped in. I have to.
Oh, go ahead.
What's his name? It's Aaron White. You guys ever see Aaron White post?
Yep.
Stumbling through. Actually, it was Shamim. I would watch Shamim videos. I was building like Nano Biscotti 4s or whatever. Yep. And he's like, yeah, one of these days I should explore Proffie board. I heard it's getting big. So I Googled it and then like came across an Aaron White video where he had this like test blade, little stubby crossguard. Yep. And he's like, this is what we had, and he's swinging smooth swing. I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty good. And he goes, and thanks to SA22C, and then he did accent swings. I'm like, yeah, somebody contributed that, and now it's a thing. I am in. And then I had no idea what a 1.344 fork.
That was just me making up numbers. First of all, I'm just like,
So But
But I
yeah, it
mean-
was a historic moment.
And the important thing is like, Frederick is a programmer by trade, 30 years or 20 years, however long he's a veteran guy, right? So he knows what he's doing. So we blunder along and we're like, hey, let's do a thing. And hey, Frederick, here's an idea. He's like, listen, I love the enthusiasm. Here's how you're going to do it for real, because your way is stupid. And he's always right. But
More or
like,
less.
the process is like, for guys who want to contribute, like, it is a bit of a process, right? Like, you can come in with like a great idea, but like, it has to be done correctly.
And he
and
wants you to do the legwork,
Well,
which is
because
a cool way to learn.
yes,
But he'll just feed you enough breadcrumbs. It's like,
Mhm.
maybe you want to look at something called this. And then you got to go,
Yeah.
okay, I guess I'll go learn about that now. And then
Yeah.
see why he suggested it. And
totally.
he'll never, I mean, so what's happened with me specifically, there was some, I couldn't stand I don't know if it was the font directory too long, right? That
Oh
that
yeah, I
error
just saw that
message.
recently. Yeah.
So that only pertains to teensy boards. And, how many questions pop up all the time? People are like, oh, it says too long. Does it mean not to? And I just wanted to get rid of that. I'm like, all we have to do is put in like, hey, if this is version 4 of the board or before, use this message. Otherwise, use this message. There's so many things, people who are listening, that once you get in and looking at the code, it's really so many conditionals. That's the way programming works. It's like, if this is what's happening, let's do this. Otherwise, let's do that. So anyway, I fixed something. It wasn't that, but I fixed something else. And I know what it was. And the line return, he had a line in there that said, like, scan, when you run it on serial monitor, you'll see the printouts, and it says scanning font teensy SF done, right? Well, done has a line return at the end. So when I added this new message saying, well, if this is a teensy board, then type out this, and actually let's say what the board is saying. So I made the message say font directory not found end is longer than 8 characters, but then I had to put a line return at the beginning, because otherwise it would just string all together, just stupid stuff like that. And he's like, why are you putting a line return at the beginning? I'm like, well, if you run it, you'd see it just like strings all together. He's like, yeah, you just need to move done up higher. So I moved done up, and then I just have it connect lower instead. I was like, well, let me just multiply. And I hit it like 4 different versions, and this is all within one pull request and the review stuff. And I did it again. I'm like, look, any of these work. It's just not the way you want it. Or I didn't say this to him, but it was any one of these things work, but it's what he's exactly looking for is unclear. So in the end, I find that the pull request is closed. He's like, I just did this myself. I got it. Don't worry about it. So like, I had the idea, and I put forth good effort over and over again, learned what he said. But if it gets to a point where he's like, this is so silly, I'm just going to do it, he just does it himself. Mm-hmm. But he does want you to do the legwork. Like, he won't just.
He wants you to.
That's
learn.
a good idea.
That's
Let me just code the whole thing for
That's
you.
what I found.
Which
is good, because I mean,
learning experience.
There's a ton. I've never written that much code ever, because I'm not a coder. So my prop is now crazy. I'm still not a coder. I play one on TV. But it was a learning experience. Now, some of the mechanics I've actually. So I'm old. So I took Visual Basic in high school when that was a thing. So like some stuff I do understand, but it's not directly transferable. And like HTML, like I know HTML because I joined the 501st back in '96, and I was part of the Empire City Garrison, and we wanted a website. And I was in college and had access to a computer, so I taught myself HTML. Now back then it was all hand coded in like Notepad, but I learned and I made a website, and it actually ran for a long time, which is surprising. But so I've got that level of experience. Then I go in and look at C++, and I get a book on it, and I read, and some pieces stand out because they're similar, and then other pieces make 0 sense. But through trial and error and asking him a billion questions, I've learned to the point that I was able to make my prop file happen and make edit mode and do all this other stuff. But it really was. If I was a trained programmer, I probably could have knocked it out in like.
Sure, but you can think like a programmer. That's the other thing. You need to kind of in your daily life, if you go to the store and you say, okay, I know I need milk, but I also need bananas. So the most efficient way I should probably go down this aisle. And that's thinking like some people just walk in there, wander around. So,
Yeah.
I mean, some people have the head for it and some people don't, I think, to some extent.
Yeah,
hey, I saw a couple of questions that I thought
Yeah,
let me get some of these.
I could answer real quick.
All right, let me get.
If you don't pull
I had one queued up. I've been talking, but let me get Nick.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, I saw this too. Hey, Nick. So actually, the comment folder. I mean, that's mostly going to be the prompt sound, but I'll let Brian handle that.
Well, the question is, does it need to be in a common folder? So the edit mode specific prompts, like all the WAV files that are everything that the sound library uses, that edit mode uses, needs to be in a folder named common. That's the way the code is written. And if I'm correct, that gets added even if it's not there to start with.
So what happens
that's where you should answer
it. Okay. So if you use edit mode or web USB or Bluetooth, it appends the common folder. If it appends the common folder to the preset, if you change fonts, the reason for it. So the common folder really should be, the common folder is essentially a catch-all because the menu prompt system and large parts of my prop use the spoken files from the sounds that Brian created. I can't, if you were to change fonts and that font didn't have the sounds, you would be lost because now no longer have the ability to know where you're at, particularly if you're in edit mode. But because edit mode and web USB have now basically been married, so the menu on the Saber is basically mimicked in the Workbench. The Workbench does the same thing. So what happens is if you go into edit mode and change the font, it will let you pick any font folder you want. That is your first font path. The second is automatically going to be the common. It's automatically appended because what we had to do is we had to account for if you buy a new font, drop it on your SD card, throw it in your Saber and change to it without putting the menu prompts in there, we would be in trouble because now you've lost the ability to know where you are in the menu and what you're doing. You could technically delete a preset or change something and not realize it. So the common folder gets appended anytime you make a change to the font. The requirement in my prop file for the common folder is because of that. If you have all the menu sounds in all of your fonts, it's still going to append a common folder to the preset. So you need at least an empty common folder. Otherwise, you're going to get font directory not found because it's being added there. So in the setup documentation, I say to add the common folder. Primarily add the common folder with the sound, the voice prompts that are provided that Brian made for us. But you can put other sounds in there. The common folder is the font search path. So if you have swings or blasts or clashes that you want to use on all of your presets, they can go in there, but they don't have to. At a minimum, you need the common folder on your SD, and at a minimum, you should just put all the voice prompts in there if you're using my prop. If you're not using my prop, the necessity probably drops a lot. I don't know if Brian's added some sound library stuff, but you probably, best practice would be if you're using OS6 to add a common folder with at least the voice prompts in it. Everything else would be really what you want to do. Everything else can stay in your font. You can also put the voice prompts in your font, and those will be used over the common folder. The common folder acts as the catch-all because we're not using Talkie. So the Talkie is built into the board, whereas these WAV files have to be present.
So that means if you want to have different menu sounds for each font, you can, and it'll override the common file.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, font search paths is literally just order of preference. So anybody who's not familiar with it, you can, where you have your font name in the preset, if you put a semicolon and then another folder or another path to another folder, it's literally just going as you load it up saying, okay, font named Luke, what do we got in here? We got a hum, we got a clash, and we got a swing. There's no accent swings. There's no boot sound. Let's look in the next folder. And then it goes past the semicolon to the next font folder in the list. And it says, anybody in here? We got a boot? Yep, we got a boot. So it just basically goes through each folder and collects every sound that it can, if it exists. If it doesn't exist, by the time it gets to the end of that list, then it doesn't have that for that font. So the idea is, again, with the edit mode, you want to have all those available for the menu. I mean, I get lost in a volume menu with no prompts. It's just beep.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening. But I always have, if I'm looking at my current OS6 like test config or whatever I run, I'll have my main font. I'll have the common folder with all the edit mode prompts. And then I have a tertiary folder called common BU, which is my backup folder. So if I get a font, I drop it in there and it doesn't have stab sounds, very possible. My common backup folder has 4 like my default stock fallback stab sounds. So I always have all the sounds that I want. This includes battery level for when you show on-demand battery level, volume up, volume down, all the spoken battery level stuff, all the spoken menu volume stuff. So yeah, font search pass is awesome. You can find that on the wiki under sound font configuration. Just
now, the one caveat is the edit mode's capabilities is going to get rid of all the others. You're going to have font common only because of how the fonts get written now. So if you try,
you'll lose that third folder.
You can't add more. Yeah, it's because of what ends up happening, right? So to change the font, what ends up happening is we actually scan the whole SD card for any folders that contain a hum.
Yep.
I think it's hum, and we say, okay, this path, and it saves that path temporarily in memory to then write it to the presets INI. It can only do that one time. So then at the end it appends semicolon common. So if you had, say you had like 6, like you had, font, semicolon, common A, semicolon, common B, semicolon, common C, it's not going to see anything else. It's going to say font, common, done. So if you have multiple common folders, you're going to want to condense them to a single, essentially.
Right. So for styles that you don't edit on, that's not going to matter. But as soon as you edit even one parameter.
If you edit the font, it's only if you change the font on that preset. We don't touch. Yeah, we don't touch the font.
The entirety of the file.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll only change. It's when you change the font. So if you have a preset that you want to have multiple search paths on, in theory, yes, you can leave it. Just don't edit the font, or you're going to lose those additionals essentially.
Okay.
Let's see. This will be Lyle. Hey, Lyle. Long term, yes. The style editor is far down the list for being updated because of everything that's happening. But yes, eventually the style editor will be updated to handle. But it's right now, Frederick would be the one to do it. I actually tried and I can't. That's over my head.
I tried to hack into that file and it
is over my. I can build my library because I built all the code from scratch, so I know what it does. No, I can't. So if somebody else wants to take a stab at it, otherwise it'll be when Frederick can. I know it's on his list of things to do. He actually didn't update to 5. The library is actually OS 4. He never updated to 5 because we moved into OS 6 so quick. So that'll be long term, yes. At launch, no. But edit mode should handle you for most of what you're going to try to do.
I sent out a plea on the Facebook open source group.
Oh,
saying,
I think I saw that. Yeah.
Anybody who can code, not just HTML, but I mean, if you have any experience or anything, it wouldn't hurt. I mean, because that's the thing here. I'm one of those guys I have ideas. I know what it should do. I can't even. First of all, I don't have the time to learn it, but to get in there, I mean, I think we should have multiple boxes, for your styles. So if you have 3 blades, you can have 3 style boxes, and then you hit power and each one of the blades does whatever's in the box. Cool. And there's all the blasters, the stuff there that's what brought it up as I was working on the blaster stuff. And there's stun, there's fire, there's auto fire. It's all there. You can build it into the effects, but there's not even buttons to trigger it, So I mentioned to Frederick, he's got an idea. Like where it says in hilt, you could also maybe drop down and choose blaster, and it would be those buttons then. And yeah. But anyway, coding the GUI to look a little smoother, and that's all stuff that would be really cool to get going at some point.
Yeah, no, I know
because it's such a tool. Honestly, I mean, I learned so much about building styles.
I mean, that's where I got my start.
How you started.
That was 100%.
You can see, that's why it's nested like that, or that's why.
And then I slipped in. Yeah. Then I slipped into the matrix, and now I can see the code for what it is.
Yeah.
So,
All
And that's
started
what I was
right
going to
on
say
the Rebel Armory.
Yeah.
What's on there?
Files.
I was going to say back in the day when it switched from when we went to layers, I had just wrapped my head, pun intended,
The nesting.
around nesting it, and I
Yeah.
had like I would type it out in my config with drop down columns, like okay, so
Yep.
this is inside this, and I would just have like like a finals, when you have like a tournament things,
Oh,
and
like
it's
a
like a
bracket.
bracket.
Yeah, the
branches and
brackets.
percent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had
percent.
all those broken out and laid out nice and clean. Started doing some aliases for the 13 color. What was it? 13 color.
Yeah,
changing
13
styles
colors
that
in
you
the
had.
color change. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, and I was like, nope. Now I hate
Layers.
that part.
Layers
It's so much
blew the
easier once you have it
doors.
in layers. It's
Well,
really so
not only
much
that,
easier.
layers blew the doors off of what's possible. That was the
Mhm.
reason for the switch was
Yeah.
when the responsive effects were first done. So originally OS4, Frederick had swing speed added as a function. And that was the only function that was what we would call responsive. But it worked pretty nicely. And so right away, once OS4 got out of beta, I think I started hitting them up about blade angle and twist angle like immediately because I wanted the lockup. I wanted to get rid of the damn animation on the lockup and make it real.
Mhm.
And he said, and we were actually going at those two functions to make them work like swing speed did, but because of the shape at the time, the way shapes worked, it wasn't. You couldn't have a lockup effect because it had to be part of the base style to do a shape. So that's where he just said, you know what, let's just do this. And he came out with layers, and he went away for a little while, worked on it, came back with layers. And he's like, all right, now you can do everything you want to do. And
Pretty much.
by breaking it into layers, it opened up everything. So pre-on effects probably would have never happened without layers. Same with post-off. Obviously, the responsive effects like they are now, they wouldn't have been able to run. So like that, the change to layers is what opened the door for everything that's come forward since there. Because the old nested styles, it was running like your base blade style. If that was the outermost bracket, was running the blast inside of itself, and it was running the lockup inside of itself, and it was running everything as a long string of effects. They just weren't visible. The layers actually now, because of the way he did it, that's where you can have all these really complex things layered on top of each other, and they only come into play when they're active. They don't take up all that additional space.
Yeah, it's cool.
So it was a big thing. But it was a big change for those of us who were used to the old way.
Yeah,
This will be, and edit mode is going to be a big change for everybody who's used to the old way too, unfortunately. But it's going to be worth it.
I have to say what's up to Tom. He's on here.
Yeah, actually, let me catch up a little more. I was
Megtooth Sith.
There you go.
Let's see. This is. I'll give this to Brian because I don't use a Mac.
What's up? Oh yeah, this is. I answered this actually in chat. There's no reason it shouldn't work in Safari. It does. You just have, maybe you got like some weird.
I actually find sometimes, the caching sometimes the blade gets a bit screwy, but just clear it out and you're good. I have the same problem on Windows actually, and for some reason, the most stable browser for me on Windows for the style editor is Firefox.
I haven't tried Firefox. I use Chrome on my Mac, and if I have 3 or 4 tabs open, working, like I'll copy from one, I'll build something in another, and then come back and stick it in the first. When I come back, if the blade was running, I mean, visually the blade's frozen. I've definitely had the biggest annoying thing is it'll just go totally unresponsive. Like the whole window will go responsive.
Yeah.
Just a tip for anybody who is working with the style editor and like building styles, have a text document open on the side. And when you do something and you add something, or you're about to make a change and you still have the ability to copy, get in that style box, select all, copy it, and then paste it on the side as like a working clipboard, because that page might go down at any, given moment. And it freezes, and like, it's not like you can refresh the tab either. You got to kill the tab, kill the whole page, open up a new instance, and then go from there. And if you try going back, here's another tip. If you've changed things in the box and you hit submit, the actual URL of the page only updates when you click
if
the
you click
right-hand
the
side
right.
column. All right. So if you click the outermost
right,
bracket of the right-hand column, that updates the address of the page you're on. So point being, if you try to go back using the back button, like I've hit blue or something, and I didn't want that, and I went back, it goes back to like the last thing that I clicked on the right, which might just be one field, and I just have like nothing there, or just integer,
Drop everything
and I keep
else.
going back, and I can't get back to where I was with my full style. So either actively copy and paste that in the size a tip, or make sure you're clicking the whole thing, the outermost layer bracket column there on the right column to keep it updated. But generally I would just, anyway, as far as it not working on Safari, it should. So
yeah, maybe refresh it
without, just playing left and right with it. I don't know.
So I'm going to show my screen because I did mean to show some of this stuff just as a rehash. So for Nick, I'll have to get a test config. I don't have a test config, but I've got a lot of the info that you would need there. So I'm going to pull this comment down for a sec. So on the countdown page, which is linked, so obviously the beta thread on Crucible, if you're not familiar with it, I'll put a link in the description. But down here at the bottom of the first post is the link to my countdown page. From the countdown page, you're going to go to the edit mode section. So I just added this today. Is a quick jump. And how do we zoom? What do we do? Control power or plus. So we can jump. You'll go to edit mode, and then in the edit mode, everything's linked. So if you go to documentation, then you'll get the test styles are down here when it talks about setting. Where'd you go? Right here. When it's actually setting up the styles. These are the test styles. They're going to come as a text file, but these are the test styles if you want to start to kind of get used to the syntax of them. It is layers. There's going to be a lot of new functions, and I can zoom this, I guess. There's going to be a lot of new functions, and there's going to be these. So these guys here, these are the arguments now that run edit mode. They'll have to. There is documentation on it, but because we've making so many changes, I have to make updates. But long term, yes, I'll get a test config put together, but everything is there. It's just kind of piecemeal. So your style stuff is going to be the test styles, and then I think that's zoomed in too much. And then your defines, which is really what the next big piece would be, is going to be in my prop. So if we go back here, you go to the prop file, go open this page for prop file, and I've got a separate section on defines. And this is going to describe all of the defines. So some of the first group here, these are system defined, so they're not specific to my prop, but a lot of these I recommend. And then everything prop specific is here, and these are all your defines. So right now it's disjointed. I'll have to get it combined for you to see, but the information for OS6 is all there. It's just separated because I wanted to kind of make it so that you could learn about each piece one at a time. But the website, the countdown website is kind of the hub, and then branch off of it to find everything. Let's see. Let me get us back. And let's see. Hey, Max. If I missed you guys when you chimed in, I apologize. Let's see. Oh, a style question. I don't know Overwatch. But I'm going to say yes, because we can pretty much mimic anything at this point. And a 50% bleed is going to be pretty straightforward. If you longer term, once OS6 releases, as people have ideas for styles, I'll probably try to get more ideas and roll stuff out. But I have, no joke, probably several hundred new styles in the works planned for the library, which is part of the reason it's taking time. And I have something that has only been slightly alluded to for people who pay close enough attention, but is probably going to blow a lot of people's minds. And I'm going to hold on to that one until the library launches. But
so I
there's
just
a lot.
Googled Genj Overwatch, and no, because it's the bottom half of the blade, not vertical. It's horizontally, right? So there's just think of the way the blade is, right? You don't have multiple rows of pixels running vertically unless you've got individually controlled zigzag.
Oh yeah, you
blade,
could do that.
Right?
Just make subblade and just have all your positive values be lit and have all your negative values not lit.
You could.
I guess I'd
into
have to
one
see
strip.
it.
What?
He's talking about the top, like lengthwise.
No, it's horizontal, right?
Yeah,
So, like,
this way.
Yeah.
So this
you're
part
right.
would be lit, and this
Yeah,
part
you
would be
could do-
dark.
Yeah.
So if
But
you
you
have
have to
two
have your-
strips, if you have two
And they're
strips,
wired properly.
Oh, you'd have to wire
two-sided,
it. I got
in
you.
series.
Okay.
Right?
That's a physical requirement
Yeah.
to make it possible. If you wired individually one side and the other, then yes, because most of your NeoPixel blades are in parallel. They're running identical on both sides. They're offset slightly, but then you wouldn't. Or zigzag blade. If you did a zigzag blade, then you could.
So you check out Frederick's site. He put together how to do a zigzag blade. I built one myself, and it's multiple strips in series. So you could have, in his case, it was 4 strips of the 35 size, 35 LEDs, so the slightly smaller strips. And you can do all sorts of interesting stuff with those 4 strips. I haven't played with it too much. It's still built and barely used, quite frankly, because it's a battery killer. So
you did like 13 strips, right?
Yeah. Well, I actually want to try those cob ones, right?
Yeah, Adafruit. What was that?
They're 25 somethings, aren't they? But they're COBs, so they got that kind of corn, like the half moon already on the strip.
Yeah, diffused built in.
Oh, okay. Here's a question from. So actually, I can jump to it. So it's not actually an app, Nick. Tom Megtooth, I don't know if he's still on. He was showing it on his phone. It's you'd actually go through your browser. So if we go to the Proffie wiki, which is
Megtooth Sith.
And then we're going to go to WebUSB. So you go ProffieOS, you go to the wiki, you go to WebUSB. And then this is the link. So you would open this. Oh, I don't have my screen showing. I'm talking and nobody's seeing. Sorry about that. Let me hide this. All right. Start over again. I'm in GitHub. I go to the wiki. Zoom in, right? You're going to look for WebUSB. When you click WebUSB, this link here, this is what why is it not zoomed in on that page? This is would be the app. So it's not an app that you load to your phone through like the store. It's actually, you would open your browser and then go to this. And this, if you have Bluetooth enabled, this is what lets you, this link is what opens up the Workbench. And I don't have anything connected, but you would choose the Bluetooth and go in. So that's what you saw. So you'd open it in the browser, not as an app, essentially. So that was the question about the Workbench.
And
I'm sure somebody could convert it to an app.
It should work, right? Because Android will let you do this, where you can actually do the WebUSB on Chrome. It won't work.
Yeah, I believe so. Oh, I don't have an iPhone either. I'm not.
Doesn't work.
Apple is foreign to me.
You don't get the same WebUSB access, I don't think. So I'm pretty sure it's not even because you use the backend Safari no matter what browser you use, right? So
right. So
Safari
that's one of those. Right. As opposed to the style editor, we answered before that it should work on Safari.
Absolutely.
The Workbench page is not. It'll say.
It looks like Megtooth is answering in the. I'm still catching up on these. Megtooth was handling that question for us, but thanks, Tom. I missed. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I got to catch up on some of these. Yep. Actually, Tom's helping us out a lot. He's answering all these questions that I'm missing. Thanks, Tom. Let's see. There's that. I'm just reading, so don't mind me. Okay, I guess no.
Oh, we got Jesse as a late joiner, it looks like.
Hey, Jesse, thanks for joining. Let's see. Yeah. So, any other questions on OS 6? I'll probably. I mean, I always hope for more questions. I know we talk a lot, but we'll as OS 6 moves out of beta, I'm sure more users will jump in. I know some people have been waiting to try OS 6 because it's in beta, and I understand that. We're in 6.1. I think there's a couple small things coming up. I know Frederick was finishing. I know Brian's doing some stuff. There's really what we have to do is for those of you who do want to test and who are able to test and also want to move us out of beta. Let me bring that screen back up.
Yeah, this is a list of things to test yet.
This is all we got to do. Now I'm going to try to help with some of this. But some of this
Yeah,
I
I
built,
should
so
too.
Frederick won't take my input because I built it. So that's part of the other thing. But the Crucible, in the very first post of the beta thread, these lists of features, anything that doesn't say, let me zoom in a little more. Now that I know how to zoom, it actually makes it a lot easier. I had no idea you could do that. But anything, so there's a lot of stuff. Some of this stuff is Frederick's actually working on, but it's not marked as tested. So some of this more like the interrupt and all that stuff, I don't know that anybody has to physically test that. I think that Frederick's doing that. But anything on this list that doesn't have a tested by, that's what needs to get finished for us to go from beta to full release. So I understand people who don't want to do beta because it is a little bit more work. And particularly because you have to keep up with the updates. And also, if you're brand new to Proffie, I wouldn't say get your feet wet in a beta test. But those of you who are used to uploading, those of you who are, hey, I'm a little impatient, I really want this to launch, we just need a little bit of help finishing out some of the stuff. Some of the stuff would be simple, some of it's more advanced. But if we can get more of this stuff tested and finished out, that's really what's the last pieces. And actually, I think, so I've been trying to tell Frederick, this color select is edit mode. So anybody who's tested edit mode styles, you've tested it because that's what that essentially runs. But a few of these I'll get updated with Frederick. I'm going to tell him other people have done it. But this is what we're waiting on, is anything that you don't see a tested by next to it.
Time since effect. What's up with that?
That I actually just talked to him about that. That one is that's the carryover from Obi Rob's wave.
Oh, right. Well, let me throw something at you. Trigger. I was talking to kids try this at home with this. Trigger, for example, in a preon, has to hold until the integer, for how long you want to hold till the integer, the time it expires. If that field could be, if we could make like a trigger until kind of function, I don't know if it would time in necessarily with the waves, but maybe you could throw a wave time at it, but you could throw a different effect at it. Like, okay, preon, do this stuff, trigger, and then hold until effect post off, or like retraction. And then it would just sit there dormantly the whole time while the blade runs. And then when you shut it off, it completes it, as opposed to a different layer on top of that, which is subject to if on. And so you got one that's if on, it's on, or one if it's on, it's off. And you can just do stuff like that. So I'm wondering if time since effect, as far as
you can test it.
Yeah, the question is like, what is the syntax? Where does it fit into a style? That's what makes it tough to test, I think.
A couple of these. So, and that's why I changed screens. So, and we were talking. I think we were talking earlier, and I asked him about effect position. Is essentially, it really is a placeholder at this point for some stuff for OS 7 that's coming. So a couple of these in select, this is actually also edit mode. This would be the options control. Hold peak is actually, hold peak could be tested. That's a pretty straightforward function. Let's see, linear section F. I don't know. I thought you tested this one, Brian.
I think Kim Kamanama did. Circular section. Oh, I don't know if
linear section. No, linear section I added. Linear section is essentially lets you target a pixel or group of pixels as a block, meaning no fade. So whereas if you do it's like a box version of bump. So if you do
that's awesome. It's a hard edge bump.
You get the fade, yeah. Linear section you can target down to a single pixel. You do have to do the calculations on it. But it's meant to be, it's a hard edge, so it ends at a specific pixel versus blending on the edges.
That's cool.
I thought I saw somebody test that, but yeah, that's what that is. Time since last effect we just talked about. I think Max, who's on here, did a lot of the testing on serial monitor stuff.
Yep.
Real Clash. I thought this got tested too, and I thought this got tested. I'll have to go back through the notes. I think some of this might have been tested and not noted. So, and I know.
Oh, Max mentioned he thought he tested the built-in high-pass filtering, which
did he? Okay.
Max you did, and that's cool. Frederick revamped some stuff because there were like some upper harmonics and
Yeah,
weird
he made a
things with
bunch of
his,
changes to
Butterworth filter he coded was acting weird, and so he just revamped that. And so I don't know if he had marked it tested, and then now that he updated it, you want to
TR select TR. So anything with select in it, color select, int select, and TR select. Those are essentially edit mode design styles. Now, because they take functions, there is actually some use for them outside of edit mode. But getting to examples for those actually requires us to move a little bit past where we're at right now. But the three select functions, essentially they run with the option variables. And the options I showed earlier is where you can have, so the TR select would be in your ignition options. So you can have like up to, you can technically have unlimited, but say 6 different ignition transitions. The TR select is what tells the style which of those options to run. The color select tells it which of the colors to run, and the int select tells it which of the, if you do like lockup position, melt size, and what else? Those are using int select. So the 3 select functions are they're already actually built into edit mode styles and the test styles. They're specifically built for edit mode because they take functions. They can be used for other purposes. But their primary design and purpose, and they've actually already been tested by everybody who's done edit mode. But that's what those are. And let's see. Yeah. Yeah, I was talking about this one earlier. Here's my test styles. I thought I had them open. There we go. So they are in here. So there's your color select. The color select will appear in a few places. And then again, color select uses it basically runs with those argument. Oh, I'm not zoomed in enough. And I got the question in the way. Sorry about that. Let me zoom in. I don't know why it doesn't stay zoomed in. So these are the test styles that are up off the countdown page. So this is color select. And you're going to see it in a few spots because it's toggling a few things, but it's basically letting you change style option, etc. And then TR select should be in here. Hiding. There we go. In out TRL. Should be in here. There it is. TR select is in here. And that's what that's doing. It's letting you choose between your wipe in. Whoops.
So it's kind of like it's somewhat like effect sequence picks up things from the list one at a time. TR select
the
picks up one
selects
thing at a time based on your chosen function.
They use the arguments. Yeah, they use the arguments from edit mode. They can take, so you can technically the problem is you can use it for other things, but all of a sudden it becomes a lot less usable because you could technically do color select and just put a static int, like int1, and then a list of different things, but it's only ever going to run number 1. So then it doesn't make sense to then have the list in there, which then means you don't need color select. So they're very specifically designed for edit mode would be my initial answer. I do have a lot of stuff in the works, though, that might leverage some of this capability in some really cool ways, but it's not in a form yet that I can share. And a few surprises I am purposefully holding on to because I want to show the full power of them before I let the world play with them. And that's selfish, but I made them. So
you wrote it.
So there's some stuff coming that I have planned for the library that I'm hoping to blow a lot of minds with, and I think it will. But there's some pieces that I'm purposefully not really talking a lot about because I haven't had time to play with them enough. But they're there, and they will do some really awesome stuff. Let's see. I think any other questions or anything? Actually, let me let you. I feel like I've been dominating the speech. So, Matt, I feel like I haven't given you much opportunity. Anything you want to talk about? Any discussion, questions, just overall thoughts?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I need to dig into the new edit mode style so I know how they function. Just like Brian felt like he had nesting figured out before layers hit. I feel like I got layers figured out, but now I don't really know how these new edit mode styles work, right? I've got some that I've been testing that I really haven't even pulled apart. So that's
Join the club.
the main thing. And just thinking about stuff for OS 7, looking at that global or the presets INI, right, where you've got all those integers laid out there, there's got to be a way, and I know there is, just a matter of doing it, of writing that out in more human readable format every time you update it, right? So instead of a list of integers, it's going to say base color, last color, pre-on option, whatever. And just list it out in a way that it makes sense. And for people that feel comfortable because they're coming from other soundboards where, text file on the SD is the way they edit, then they're going to feel a lot more comfortable about, mucking with settings. Again, no flashing, but then if they don't want to go, because it's quicker, right? If you know what you want to do, you can go bing, bang, boom. That's quicker than going through the edit mode and twist, 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 right? Not that edit mode's bad, it's great. It's just about, like, some people like to work in different ways. So I think that's something that, I think would be worth digging into for sort of the next release, is like making all those files human readable when they're written out.
And the first thing that comes to mind for me would be using something like an HTML base. I mean, to me, those are drop-down menus, like you want to pick a color, you hit the drop-down menu, pick it just like the library is now. And then ultimately, instead of necessarily, maybe not a style code, but it could generate something that you could just copy paste and drop into your style.
Yeah, the order of those variables is locked. It is always going to be the exact same order, no matter what style you load. And I didn't touch on it. Again, the documentation will talk on it. The tilde symbol that appeared in there when I showed it earlier, I think I still have that open. Did I keep it open? Yeah. So let me switch this real quick. So the tilde in here, anywhere there's a tilde, that just means that this style, when this was generated, did not use that variable.
Right.
Because we needed to be able to ignore information. And what if this appears, so you'll see these as people go in, it just means that particular argument spot is reserved. So we had to put a character in there, but we had to put a character in there that didn't do something. So that's what this essentially is. So the spots, the location of each one of these in every single style, this will always be base, this will always be alt, this is always style option, this is always so yeah, they are fixed and they will stay fixed. So yeah, it makes sense longer term. We probably figure that part out.
It would make the file bigger, which would be, might be an issue, right? But because you think about it, you're going to have new preset. Instead of new preset, it would hopefully say like preset 0, list all your variables and their values, and then preset 1. So the file would get big, which may be an issue. I don't know, right? We're writing that file a lot. Maybe that's a problem. That's a question for Fedric, really. But just thinking out loud about, just like edit mode on the Saber is for, accessibility.
Yeah, I mean, longer term, I do plan to take your presets INI write-up and append it with all this and give, like, I can basically, like, hopefully do, like, it'd probably be like a image, but screenshot that this group of, this is an RGB 16 value equal to base color, like, show what these all break out to. Because, like, people will be able to edit this, but as it is now, you'll have to dive in and understand it.
Yeah, especially in a file like this where the space separation is critical, right?
Yeah.
And it can be.
Yeah, if you're missing a space, then all of a sudden the values don't work so good.
Now, this is a big release. I don't know what Fredric's plans are, obviously, or anyone else who wants to contribute. But
I think it's a lot of under the hood stuff here.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to clarify, not that people shouldn't be scared away looking at this. This is not stuff you need to do.
No, the menu.
This is when you want to dig in manually and go nuts. If you want to see the underpinnings, this is like looking at code as well. It's just like, you don't need to go in there and do any of this. That's the whole point of edit mode in the first place, is that all this is done for you. But if you are curious as to what's going on and you end up, taking a more advanced route to manually editing this is what you're up against. But yeah, Matt, I think it's a good point that for that point, like when if someone gets to that point, having this be a little more, visual, even if it's just like comment lines or something.
Well,
Explains what
there
this
just
one
needs to
is.
be like a key value pair, right? It's going to base equals last
Right.
equals, right? As opposed
Sure.
to being a space separated variable list without any names of the variables associated with it, right? So,
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, there'd be some code rewrite because this is all handled by style parser. So this
yeah,
is
the style
already
parser would have to be written to dump this out in a different format, right?
yeah. So
That would
that's
be
where
that
this
comes.
all and this technically this all piggybacks existing capabilities that Frederick modified to make work with the edit mode capability. But that's essentially this is so Frederick would obviously end up needing to sign off on anything we did too because this is all tied in.
Hey, Fernando.
Yeah.
Kids try this at home is a good question. It makes sense. Yeah. Can we put comments in?
Well, these are INI files, so it's not the same as your config.
Right.
This will reside on your SD.
But
Somebody
It
has
gets
to test
blown
it.
away. So it gets blown away every time you make a change, right? The entire file gets rewritten.
Yeah, the file
So
gets
if you put a
rewritten
comment
on
in,
every
it's going to
change.
go
Right.
away.
That's
It'll
right.
disappear. So if you change a single color, it rewrites the file.
Right.
Yeah.
So it would be. This is not. Yeah. This is essentially like the save log of what you've done. It's not something that you play with in comments and stuff. Though I'll have to do for OS6. There'll be documentation coming for those of you who want to do this. This would be what I would call the people who really just want to look at numbers approach. The idea of between the workbench with the Bluetooth capabilities and the edit mode menu. Plus, technically, if you wanted to, you could still go old way and just build your config how you want and go forward without either. But if you're going to make those changes, unless you really want to dive in and learn this, I would say stick with having the menu or stick with the workbench. And I mean, it's either or. Like in some ways, the menu makes things a little easier, but you do have to obviously use it. So you got to dial through and click, and you got to follow the menu system. In other ways, WebUSB makes some things a little easier. Some things I go back and forth because some things I know how to do so well. Now, granted, I'm the author, but I know how to do some things in edit mode so well that I can just dial through and get it done. Other things I'm like, all right, I plug it in and WebUSB works much faster. So it'll be trial and error. This is a third option that exists for those who want to learn it. But this would be where I put like advanced users and make sure you understand what you're doing before you go in type of thing. Let's see. For Max. For edit mode, yes. This is Frederick and I were talking about this. Frederick touched it a little bit last week. OS6, you can take your config from OS5 with your styles as is, and you can use OS6. And you can use edit mode to change the font. Now you will have to have the common folder. That's in the setup. The common folder have to be there. But you can change the font, you can change the track, you can change the styles. Where you will not have, without the OS6 capabilities, the OS6 style capabilities, you cannot edit. So color editing and all the options, plus like ignition speed, all that stuff, those are edit mode syntax. So it would be essentially the two menus that are controlled by style are your color editing capabilities, so the edit colors menu and all the submenus below it, and your style settings menu, which handles style option, ignition option, retraction option, style time, ignition time, pre-on option, like all that stuff. Those need the edit mode syntax. But if you take an OS5 style and you load them up and you have your OS5 config, you put the menu on, you set your SD card up with a common folder and it has the sounds, you can take your presets, make copies of them. You can change the style, change the font, change the track. Technically, you can also change the blade length and the volume, the clash strength. All that stuff would work fine. It's when you get to global version capabilities. Color editing and style settings require the new syntax because the new syntax is actually what you're changing.
Mm-hmm. It's worth noting though that like if you have a style you like and you just want to add in like the base color change, you can just do a find and replace on that one piece and add the color change, the new color change style, or whatever it's called, to do the base color. You don't have to have the full fat, everything is changeable style. It can be completely a la carte, right? So if you just want to have a simple menu and say, I only want to ever change base color, everything else, you can just make styles with just base color, and then it will only do that base color, and it'll be as simple as complicated as you want.
Yeah, the color editing menu reads the effects within the style. So if you set up just base color, that's the only option you can change. If you want to just do base and blast and lockup color, then the menu will only have those 3 options for you. That was a big piece of what I built into that menu system, is the ability for it to understand which style is active and only give you those options, because it didn't make sense to have people editing stuff that wasn't active in their style. So when it comes time to build them, yeah, you can add a couple of the arguments in. And actually I still have that open. So this is basically, let's find a color argument. Let me show it. So here's your base color. Now these are really big on purpose, but basically this would be your replace. So if you had like red as your base color, you would put in the RGB argument, base color, RGB, and this will be written out in documentation a little bit more, but that's what allows the base color to change. So it's basically RGB argument means that it can take an argument. This is the argument within the presets INI to look for, which is base color arg, which is the 3rd option. And then this is the color to use if there's no argument present. So that's your default color. If it finds this argument in presets INI, it uses this color. If it can't find it, it uses this color. And that's really all it is. It's not anything crazy, but if you build, like all these styles have all of the options in them, it does grow the style quite a bit, but it also adds all that capability. And I think it'll make more sense as more people get their hands on it too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely think there's going to be learning curve is one word for it, but it's going to take time for this to flesh out and really catch on and become familiar, and
that's why I'm working on the library. I'll have the library.
That's definitely going to help
to get people to get the ground off.
Maybe in one of those nudging Frederick conversations could be like, a style editor really helps people out. Because
I know it's on his list. I know it's on his list.
I'm sure it is. I mean, he's one guy though. He's the one guy who can do it. That's the point.
And the amount. So he talked about this last week. If we really rolled this out, we would be on like OS 9 or 10 right now. So the pieces in OS 6 could easily be multiple OSs. Part of it, okay, a lot of it's my fault because I held on to a lot of it to get it perfect before I submitted it. And then when I dropped 3,000 or 4,000 lines of code on Frederick, it took him a long time to go through it.
Right.
So yeah, you can blame me that we don't have OS 10 yet. But OS 6 is the equivalent of OS 9 or 10 if you really break it apart.
Right. And that being said, Style Editor, like you said, is still back on basically OS 4.
It's on OS 4, yeah.
So there's that much more to catch up. Almost like it could just be rewritten. I mean, how he has ProffieOS as an emulator in there, I don't know. But there has been talk, and it's out of his brain, his ideas to start with. Like we some conversation was happening, and his comment was, maybe we should have it like be a smooth swing emulator so you could test fonts.
Well, all he's done is he's ported all of the style files from C into JavaScript. So that the reason why that web page gets unresponsive is it's running the Arduino loop with all the stuff that on the blade level in your web browser. And that's why if you leave it for forever, it's going to, whenever runtime memory the JavaScript have, it's going to crash, right? Like if you go and look at the code, it's all just the styles files you would see in the, the styles folder in your code for the lightsaber, except converted to JavaScript. So I know when we were doing I did some very minor changes to the style editor way back when to add some features. And that's all it was. I had to go into the JavaScript and kind of like, oh, this looks like the C code. Okay, I know it's a change here or whatever, right? So it is literally just emulating all those, like not emulating, it's running it in JavaScript. So with the smooth swing, it would be the same thing. I know exactly what you'd do. He would just take all that C code in the hybrid font and the smooththing.h, and he would just port it to JavaScript and run it on the browser.
And then he was talking about web audio. So
Mm-hmm.
linking, if you have a Bluetooth controller and it could send, could send sensor information, you could literally, like a Wii remote, you could swing your Saber here, browser would play it over there. Cool stuff. Like there's it could go way down one like that direction. It's a ton of work, a lot of work to do.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's see. Let me just see if we missed any.
I don't really see questions, just kind of like conversation going on.
Yeah, hey, that's cool too. I mean, I was hoping I had documented as much as possible for everybody, so I take it as hopefully I answered the questions in the documentation. Now I know there's a lot of it, so that's why actually let me bring that back up because I did set it up on purpose. So as people are interested in OS6, so if you're testing, you're already aware of this. If you're interested in OS6, this countdown page, I did just add this breakout up here because I touched on it last week with Frederick. A lot of the capabilities, particularly related to my prop file, are optional. You don't have to do them. You don't have to use them if you don't want to. And if you want to like try a piece out and then add it and then go back, that's why I broke it out the way I did, was because there is so much. Oops, I'm losing my earpiece. So I wanted to keep it separate for those of you who are maybe want to dip your toe into OS6 and kind of learn it. So like if you're just interested in only like doing the real class setup, I've made it so that you could read about it. The documentation is separate, and the discussion thread and everything. But it's to break it into smaller pieces because there is going to be a lot to digest. Particularly if you are just first going to jump to OS6 after not being involved in beta and not really reading. So that's part of the reason I wanted to make this a little easier for everybody. But there is a lot, and some of this stuff is straightforward, but some of this does require setup. So as we get closer to launching OS6, like I said, anybody who can help testing would move us along further and faster. But if you're interested or just waiting for OS6, this countdown page is really there to help you kind of understand and take it piece by piece and get stuff prepped. Some stuff requires you to change the ordering in your font file names. The real class, you'd reorder your class sounds and your begin lockup, end lockup in a sound sequentially. Accent-based or acceleration-based accent strings is the same thing. So there's some setup you do for your fonts, and if you have a lot of fonts, that's why I wanted to give that out there to people to start to be able to do it earlier. Track player is a pretty straightforward setup, but you'll put the tracks folder in each font, and that will let track player run. Quote player, obviously add quotes to your font. The voice prompts, again, thanks to Brian for providing, you'll get those, add those to your common folder and or your font folder, and then a lot of this other stuff. So that's why it's broken out the way it was. If I were to try to dump everything you can do in OS6 on a single page, I felt like it was going to be way too much. So it's broken out for you to be able to hopefully digest it and understand it so that when the OS releases, you're ready to go, or at least far enough along that it doesn't take you so long to get up to speed. Let's see. Oh, you're Brian's answering questions in the chat. Yeah, I gave Brian some trouble with I touched on this last week with Tom and Frederick, but originally I asked for a group of sounds, and then I kept adding to that group, and Brian kept coming through, and at one point I had been listening to the voice that he had provided me for so long, I called it my Jarvis. Because I had done so much testing with this voice, and then he went and created all these other voices, and he went off and did all the other languages, and then I had to pick from a new voice, and I was so attached to my Jarvis version, I was like, I miss Jarvis, but it definitely, that was, it felt like my partner because we did so much testing with that thing, but he did voices.
Yeah, I had to abandon that guy because what's important for people to know is Frederick is huge on everything being open and license free. Like it's got to be Creative Commons and all that. And now that I think about it, I can't. Oh yeah, so I used a text to speech editor, and then I affected it and I processed it. But the root of the voice came from like Oddcast, I think it was called, and they had paid, programs you could use that you could purchase, or as a business you could use their services and that kind of stuff. I was just using like the online demo and recording it off on the side and making it work. Didn't realize it would come into be like an official thing where like, oh, if we really want this to be in here, it's got to be legit. So I had to scrounge and find like good, and especially when I get into the 7 different languages and like 5 different variants of each.
Yeah, it's crazy how much you did.
There's the sources all came from legitimate, like, you can use this license, this is license free. And he made me include the if you look in the packages, there's actually a license .txt file that clears it, so it's legit.
Yep.
But yeah, so I couldn't give you the Jarvis.
No, I know. I think it's B. I forget. I've loaded a bunch of them up, but I think B is he's my.
That was the closest one.
He's my mail Friday, I guess. Yeah, I'll call him.
That's
there's no Jarvis coming back, but yeah, he's back around. So I'm used to that one. But yeah, there was a period of time when he told me that we couldn't use the voice. I was so bummed. I was like, no. But
I'll try to find something close. But
I know. No, it was, like I said, considering the alternative was going to be my voice on my crappy mic, can't ask for anything better. So it turned out really great. Let's see. Yeah, 187. I have a couple videos on the countdown page that the audio was terrible because I was trying to do it with. I don't have a mic like Brian has. But I was trying a mic on my computer, thinking it would be better, and it was worse than my webcam mic. I thought it'd be better until after I recorded it, and so much has happened since then that I just haven't had time to re-record it. Eventually I will re-record those, or hopefully just document it better. But yeah, there's I think 2 or 3 of them sound horrible, and I apologize. But yeah, it was. I made them in a pinch, and I didn't have time to remake them. That's basically it. Let's see.
Where'd Jesse go? I would love a question from a font maker asking.
He came and he went, it looks like.
Yeah. Well, I think if anybody has any other questions.
Cyberphonic fonts and his big red beard.
If there's any other questions, I guess throw them in the chat. Others will probably wrap this up shortly for everybody, and I'll probably have both you gentlemen on again in the future if you're free. And I do plan. I think Tom signed out, but I do plan to hopefully get Meg2 back. And I know he does his own thing, so his time obviously gets taken. But as we get along, probably maybe more just overall discussion on.
Wow,
maybe future ideas. It does. I actually just looked at the clock. I was surprised nobody knocked on my office door. Hey, maybe the kids put themselves in. But I appreciate you guys coming on tonight. I appreciate everybody. Oh, hey, Meg2's this still here. Hey, yeah, definitely, Tom. I would definitely love to have you on again. So, and if you guys didn't see, anybody who's watching who didn't see last week's video, I had Tom on, and we actually got Frederick himself to join. So that was a pretty good discussion. And now 2 more of the big contributors here. And I know SA22C is being modest about OS6, but a lot of, I talked about it last week. I wouldn't even touch one button if I wasn't using this file. I know Brian likes it. I know SA22C likes one button. I know there's a lot of people like one button. I made a 1-button prop. I will never use it. I do not like it.
Well, let me say this. I think there's 2 factors that definitely come into play. One, I have very awesome, responsive, clicky, tactile buttons.
Yeah.
And 2, I am not dressed up like Darth Vader wearing gloves, trying to do it on a DV6 or on a Graflex. That said, I can totally understand where you're coming from, because I mean, I got this saber from some guy, and had a button in there, so like from Phil McGinnis. He does these cool little brass bubble buttons. And it was just recessed, like you had to push way in there, and there's no click, there's no tactile thing.
Yeah.
So I threw up my prop file, and I'm like, oh, let me just triple click and check the battery. And nope, like I couldn't do anything. I had to replace the button. So I get it, but I think we talk about this all the time, but you have all these new LGT sabers coming out. There's a lot of just
They're all
one stuff.
button.
So to support it, I think you made a really good, good choice. And the effort is like, there's no way to applaud you enough on how much time and effort because you're not even going to use it. You're doing it for the good of everybody else, which is amazingly selfless.
We got together. Yeah, we got together. We did a similar thing, but it wasn't recorded for YouTube. But way back when, I had both you gentlemen on with Frederick to try to teach you the parts of my prop to use them in yours. And the more I was explaining it to you, as the words were coming out of my mouth, I was like, yeah, they ain't gonna be able to add this. I was like, nope. No. So that's why I reached out to Matt, and I reached out to Brian. I knew Brian was doing his own thing, but I said, hey, I was like, maybe I'll bring your buttons into my file. Would that be cool? And of course you were cool with it. And at first I was like, all right, I've never used one button. Let me bring it over. So I just brought it over stock and dropped it in, and I was trying to make it work. And I couldn't get the damn thing. Like half the stuff I wanted to do was like, okay, triple click. And then I get like something that was a double click. I was like, what the hell was it? Like, it was so much of a hassle for me. I was getting mad, and I know I vented to Matt a few times about it, but eventually I got the hang of it. But yeah, it's definitely a personal preference, but I wanted to support it. My original intention was to make it so that you guys could take the pieces of my prop, put them in yours, and be done with it. I realized because of how big the prop was, plus everything being interrelated, which made it, when I was building it, it worked great, but trying to port it because everything's all interlaced was going to be a nightmare. So the solution was to do one button in my prop, which makes sense because I do get people who ask me for one button. And I've always said, well, SA22C did such a great job on his, just use it. Why? I'm not going to reinvent the wheel, but in this instance, it made sense. So,
but in OS5, I didn't do stuff like dual phase or the styles with the battery meter stuff. Like I cut some stuff out. So like definitely I can see how people like who definitely get styles from your library want it to all work the way they expect. And from my library, I'm like, I didn't do it. So yeah, it makes sense to have it all in one place.
So it's there, and it seems to be working pretty well. I did, for anybody who isn't keeping up on the beta chain, 6.1 dropped, meaning we made the move inversion. I did change one control in one button to do the color zoom, and it's because of having a single button. So the biggest thing to me in going from two button to one button is having a secondary button. It opens up, to me, it opens 2/3 more controls, because you have the aux button by itself, the power button by itself, but then you have it when you do the two in combo. So it's a lot more, to me, it makes more sense. Whereas one button, you can only do single click, double click, triple click, quadruple click, but you could do a double click with a hold or a double click with a long click, or like you get that. But with the zoom function requires you to keep the button pressed to keep the zoom active. And if you let go of the button, it deactivates the zoom. Because I only had one button, it didn't work so good. So I had to make it so you double click it. So that was a change that came in, because by having the press check as the first action, I basically knocked out half the controls in the prop file in the anytime edit mode was active, which obviously isn't ideal. So that was a change that came in, but that's something that I never really considered when you deal with two button that you end up running into with one button. Everything is actually a lot tighter related than it is in two button.
Yeah.
But it works now. So.
And you had modified the click times to make it work, Matt, in your initial file.
I fiddled with them to make it tighten some up and loosen some other ones, so it was more forgiving.
Yeah. So I had to do that. Definitely had to change the timings beyond the defaults, because just to make room for that in between thing, like, if you click, or you click hold, or you click hold long, you needed a little bit of a buffer between those three zones, and they were just like right on top of each other, and there was no way to figure it.
You had to expand that range,
and it just makes it work. You just got to get used to it. But I think Fernando, you need buttons that are like
and
nice,
the problem.
tight,
So I've got
buttons.
This entropy here, which doesn't show up because of my stupid background. The button's crap, and it's only my fault because I installed it, but it has no click. So I've been testing one button on it, and it's an absolute nightmare. Whereas I just built an MHS with a tactile, like those round dome ones that you drill in. That one's so good.
Yeah, that's nice. So that makes a
my
difference.
My two main sabers that I use at events are my Kylo, which is I purposely drilled the holes where they are for the exact placement that my hand lands, so my hand doesn't even have to move to use them because they're actually set up perfectly for my two fingers. And I use obviously my MPP for Vader, and the same thing. The way the way the buttons ended up lying out is because both characters are gloved, like Brian was saying earlier. I basically, before I put my helmet on, I put my hand on my saber. My hand does not change position on that saber the whole time the helmet's on, because I know when I do this with my fingers, it's going to do what I want it to do. If ever, a few times, you go to position yourself for like a picture and the saber turns, I can't find the damn buttons for the life of me. And I have to pull the helmet up a little bit and turn it in with a glove, particularly both the Vader glove and the Kylo glove, they have padded too in the fingers. So it makes it really hard otherwise. Oh yeah, Megtooth. Yeah. Oh, I use battle mode in a lot of events.
Well, that's the other thing about one button, right? So like, put it right in the battle mode. You're not doing any of the lockup stuff, right? You're just doing blasters. So that helps.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. No, it's and battle mode 2, which we didn't get to talk too much about, was lets you have those. That was the addition I added for OS6. Is if you just bump your saber, you don't get a lockup. But you do have to set that up. So it is if for anybody who reads the documentation, but it's an addition to Battle Mode 1.0. If you just put the prop file in, it's going to default to Battle Mode 1.0. You have to add the clash detect define at a value greater than, typically I'd say 6 or 7, and then that triggers the 2.0 capability. I'll have to cover that at some point too. There's so much I got to cover.
Hey, I got a question for you, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
What's the significance of your tag?
So, this is the cars that I've sort of been obsessed with for damn near 20 years now. Actually,
a Fiero or something?
Oh.
No.
So they're Mazdas, and they're from 79 to 85, and they're a little two-seater with absolutely no power to speak of, but they're little rotary sports cars. And I've driven them competitively and have owned lots of them. Not competitively, amateur motorsports, like SCCA equivalent, because I'm in Canada, obviously. So yeah, when I was in my 20s, I did a lot of that. And then I sold them all, and I met my wife, and I was carless, and she took pity on me a couple years ago and found one in the local classifieds and bought me another one. So now I've got, actually I've got 2, but I'll soon have 1 again.
Really cool.
Yeah. So it's the chassis code of that first generation RX-7. So in Japan, they were SA22CL from 79 to 85. In the US, it was only 79s and 80s. And all of my racing days were on a 79 chassis. So that's where that comes from.
That is cool. I did not know that. And I'm a car guy too. I didn't know that.
Well, they're weird little cars. It's one of those things you don't really know until you get into it's a rabbit hole like lightsabers, quite frankly.
Sure.
It's the subculture of a subculture, right? Because cosplayers and then lightsaber builders, it's a very small Venn diagram.
That's what hobbies are for.
Mm-hmm.
Like-minded. Cool. So NoSloppy, yours. What's your?
Oh, I think that's just my kid. One time I was trying to explain, don't do things, half-assed. Don't do it like that. You don't want to do it sloppy. Okay, NoSloppy. I'm like, all right.
There you go. Okay.
And then my friend said, hey, if you could incorporate that, you could be NoSloppy Inc. I'm like, okay. And then I don't know, I literally pick a username to log into this forum, and I did. And then I didn't want to if you Google search your name and you come up every forum post you ever posted somewhere, I was like, all right, I don't want it to be my name. I just want it to be something. Yeah. So it's stupid and absolutely nothing, but it's like a child's babbling.
But now it's your name.
Yeah.
So you know.
And Fernando, if I'm not mistaken, yours is just because it adds a random FET and a number to people on the TRA who didn't pick a username. Is that correct?
No, actually, mine does have significance. So
that's TK. It's not a TK.
263. Yeah, 263. Well, so I am old time 501st. So the 501st forum started out as a stormtrooper costuming group, and back in 95-ish, the exact date I forget. I was a Boba Fett costumer for a long time, actually before the 501st. And I met some of these 501st Stormtroopers at an event in Atlanta, the Dragon Con, which is huge now. Back then it was way different, but I went to it. And I met these 501st guys, and they loved my Fett costume because I poured a lot of time into it. Now, I used vacuum forming, and like I had the original Don Post fiberglass helmet, which now everybody hates, but back in the day, that was like the epitome of costuming helmets. So I had a pretty legit Fett. When I went back to New York, I hooked up with the 501st group there, and they had a Vader and a ton of Stormtroopers, but no Boba Fett. So I became the first Boba Fett there. But in order to become part of the group, I needed a TK ID, which is back then it was the 3-digit number based on like TK421. Why aren't you at your post? So I picked 263 because it was available. So I had a TK ID of 263, but I was Boba Fett. So it was a little weird. The 501st obviously grew. They've expanded to the point now that they have like the BH263, which is a bounty hunter. But originally, your TK ID was always TK and 3 digits until they got the thousandth member, and it became 4. And now I think they're up to 6 digits. But 263 is my TK ID, and I was the original Boba Fett for the Empire City Garrison. I think there was 2 other Boba Fetts recognized in the 501st in the United States. But I was one of the originals. And back in the day, and this is going down the 501st wormhole, I built the original Empire City Garrison website, but my compensation for it was that there was no other Boba Fetts allowed in the Empire City Garrison while I was Boba Fett. So I was the only Boba Fett for a while. Eventually, we had others join, but for a number of years, I was the only Boba Fett in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area that was recognized 501st. So since then, I've moved on to Vader and Kylo and a bunch of other stuff. But my original costume, my original introduction was Boba Fett, and my original TK ID was 263.
Nice.
There you go.
So yeah, Megtooth. Yeah, I'm old time. Like, yeah, I've been 20. Yeah, long. Wow, 96. So a long time.
Well, I'm pretty old too, so
yeah,
just maybe not quite as old.
Yeah, it's a good hobby to be getting old in.
Check this out.
One, that's the guy.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
You have that shirt?
I have many shirts. Actually, hold on. What am I wearing? Here, look at this here. So it's my stupid bear.
I see you.
Evolution Rotary. Yeah.
It's awesome. Cool.
Very cool. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining tonight.
I'm good. Thanks for having.
Yeah. We'll do this again, and anybody in the chat who wants to help out, let's get this testing done. Let's get this released, and I think we'll probably call it a night, everyone. So I'll let you guys have the mic to close us out, and thanks so much.
I'm good.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks for watching, everyone. And hopefully everyone's got some cool new lightsabers to load the code on. I know I'm working on something that I'm looking forward to putting a new code on. So looking forward to everyone's creations. And non-lightsaber stuff too, like what you're working on with the blaster stuff. I think that's cool. That's a very neglected corner of the prop world. So
yeah, it's fun because you think it just goes pew pew, but you can do a bunch of stuff, and it's pretty straightforward. It's not like I need 3,000 lines of prop code, and I've just ported most of it over from my existing Saber. Like ideally, if you're doing, because I got the Spectre 6, so I want to just have it do.
Yeah, with the stapler.
Yeah, so you stick blade in, and it's a Saber. You pull it out, it does Saber. Yeah. So to work in tandem with my prop and my blaster prop, you just kind of put the pair together, and they work in tandem together. And I don't know, OLED was cool. So there's stuff coming out. And
well, one of these days, I've got a phaser shell, just like my tricorder shell, that I'll convert to Proffie and make a phaser blaster. So
it's funny. I'm just going through my boxes of stuff to do. I have a phaser and I got a communicator. I forget the company they're from, but it's like the nice high-end phaser. I think it does TV remote control too. And
Oh
stuff. Maybe
yeah,
you know of
I know
it.
the one you're talking about.
I
Yeah.
forget the name of the company, like One Dream Creations or something. But I'm looking at it going like, do I want to take this apart and make it do stuff? Like, nah, I can't do
Yes,
that.
you do.
Yes,
I
you
do,
do.
but
Yes, you do.
I also have a floating Jedi training remote I didn't build. That's totally cool. I want to put a wave player of sorts in the base and put like, Falcon ambience going on in there with the pew, pew. All kinds of projects yet to do. It's just find time to do it.
And then,
So-
like I said, 2 cars in my garage. I need to turn into 1 car. That's the whole situation.
One that works.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm out here. If anybody wants to
thanks
hit
so
me up,
much.
ask
Yeah.
questions,
10 o'clock.
always.
Yeah, I think this is a good runtime. 2 hours. Wow, it didn't feel like it, but thanks so much,
No.
gentlemen, and
Thanks for
Absolutely.
hosting.
we'll see you all again. Yeah, thanks everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Cool.